My name is Ethan Duval. I'm a venture capitalist, founder of a successful AI startup, and, by all outside appearances, a man who has everything. At least, that's what people assumed. The house, the suits, the penthouse view, the investors shaking my hand at charity galas, the luxury car that turned heads when I pulled into the driveway. That was the image I built. That was the armor I wore. But behind it all, I was hollow. I had no one waiting for me at home. No family dinners. No warmth. Just silence and spreadsheets. I used to think that was enough. That success was louder than loneliness. But everything changed the night I saw her. It was pouring. Not a drizzle, not a polite mist. I'm talking relentless, bone-soaking rain that blurred the city skyline and made the air smell like metal and regret. I was leaving a late dinner with a client. My driver was pulling the car up, and I was scrolling through emails, pretending to care. But something tugged at the edge of my vision. A woman, slumped under the awning of a closed bookstore. She had no umbrella, no coat, just wet strands of hair clinging to her face and a baby bundled in her arms, wrapped in what looked like a threadbare blanket. The baby wasn't crying, just nestled close, eyes wide open, blinking up at the storm. I don't know why I stopped. I should have gotten in the car. I should have told myself it wasn't my problem. But I didn't. I walked toward her. And when she saw me, her eyes didn't light up. She didn't beg. She didn't even flinch. She just stared at me like she'd seen too many faces that passed her without looking twice. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm. Hollow. We'll be gone soon. I asked her if she needed help. She shook her head. Nobody helps for free. That hit me harder than I expected. Because I realized she wasn't wrong. I'd spent years in boardrooms calculating the cost of kindness, measuring ROI on human interaction. But that night, with rain soaking through my $1,000 shoes, I didn't see a problem to fix. I saw a person, a mother, alone, afraid, and proud. I didn't know her name yet, didn't know her story, but something in my chest cracked open. A part of me I thought had long calcified stirred awake. I'm not asking for anything, I said. But if you and your child need shelter tonight, my home is dry. She blinked, and for a second, I thought she might laugh, or tell me to leave her alone. But instead, she looked down at her child, then back at me. What's the catch? There is none, I replied. And I meant it, because I didn't know then what she would come to mean to me. But I knew in that storm on that night that fate had just handed me a second chance disguised as a soaked woman holding a silent child. She hesitated before taking a single step toward me. Her fingers tightened slightly around the bundle in her arms. I watched her eyes scan me, not with fear, but with calculation. She was someone who had been burned before. Someone who didn't believe in kindness without motive. I'm not going to hurt you, I said, softer this time. Her gaze flicked to the baby, then back to me again. And finally, she nodded, once. We rode in silence. My driver didn't say a word, but I could see the flicker of confusion in the rearview mirror. He'd been with me for years, and not once had I ever brought anyone home. Not friends. Not women. Certainly not soaked strangers from a city sidewalk. I offered her a towel. She accepted it without thanks. The baby stirred a little, letting out a tired, weak cry. That sound, quiet, muffled by exhaustion, was the first time I saw her walls shake. She gently rocked the infant with practiced instinct. No panic. Just muscle memory. His name's Micah, she said. And yours? I asked. She hesitated. Leah. No last name. No explanation. Just Leah. When we arrived at my townhouse, I guided her up the marble steps. She looked like she didn't belong, and I hated that. Hated that my home, my success, the very air inside that building screamed, "Get out," to someone who had done nothing wrong but fall on hard times. I watched her take in the foyer, the chandeliers, the echoing silence, the museum-level sterility. This place doesn't smell like anyone lives here, she said quietly. She was right. I offered her the guest room. She declined it. Said the baby wouldn't sleep unless she held him, and she didn't want to soil the sheets. You're not dirty, I said before I could stop myself. She gave me a look, not offended, just tired. You'd be surprised how many people think otherwise. She sat on the edge of the velvet couch, cradling Micah like she was afraid to exhale too loudly. I brought her a warm bottle for the baby, tea for herself. She didn't touch either at first. I watched them. This woman and her child. Fragile but steady. Drenched in rain and dignity. She didn't ask for anything more. Didn't try to impress me. Didn't offer a sob story. And maybe that's why I couldn't stop looking at her. Because for the first time in years, my home didn't feel like a fortress of wealth and ego. It felt like a place where something real might grow. I didn't sleep that night. And for once, it wasn't insomnia. It was something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Hope. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the living room in golden patches, warming the cold marble that had never known the weight of real footsteps before. Leah was already awake. She stood by the window, barefoot, gently bouncing Micah against her shoulder. He was calm, eyes wide and curious. She, on the other hand, looked like she hadn't slept. I brought her coffee. She murmured a thank you this time, not quite gratitude, more like acknowledgement. A truce. I wanted to ask so many things. Where did she come from? What happened to her? Why was someone like her out in the rain, holding a child like he was the last thing tethering her to this earth? But I didn't ask. Instead, I said, "Do you have anyone you can call?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. No. I waited. She didn't elaborate. So I tried another angle. How old is Micah? 6 months, she said, kissing his temple. He likes early mornings and hates loud voices. And his father? A pause. She looked at me then, directly. Not with anger, but with steel. Gone. I didn't push. She carried herself like a woman who had been interrogated too many times, by authorities, by judgmental neighbors, by people who saw a single mother and assumed a string of mistakes. But what I saw was a survivor. And a damn strong one. She finally took a sip of coffee, watching me over the rim of the cup. Why did you bring me here? She asked. It wasn't accusatory. Just tired curiosity. I don't know, I said honestly. I guess I was tired of walking past people like you and pretending I didn't see them. She let out a small, bitter laugh. Well, that makes me your charity project now, huh? I stepped closer. No. It makes you the first real thing to walk into my life in years. That shut her up. Not because she believed me, but because maybe, just maybe, a part of her wanted to. I gave her space after that. I had meetings to attend, numbers to chase. But all day, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Leah, standing barefoot in my living room like a ghost from another life. Leah, who didn't cry, didn't beg, didn't flinch. Leah, who looked like she carried a lifetime of grief in her silence. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was a mystery. And I was already too deep to walk away. That night, I came home later than usual. I told myself I was staying at the office to finish investor reports, but really, I was stalling. Part of me feared that when I opened the door, they'd be gone. That Leah would have vanished like some dream I wasn't meant to hold on to. But they were there. Micah was asleep on the couch, wrapped in a throw blanket. Leah sat nearby, arms crossed, hair damp from a recent shower. She looked uneasy, not scared, but unsettled. I can leave if it's too much, she said before I could speak. I frowned. What? No. Of course not. She looked down at her hands. People don't usually invite someone like me into a place like this without expecting something in return. You're not someone like anything. You're Leah. She met my eyes. And that's when I saw it, the flicker of something cracking. Micah's father, she began, then stopped. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He was dangerous. The words hung in the air like smoke. I stayed silent. She looked toward the baby, then back at me. I met Marcus when I was working nights at a bar outside Richmond. He was charming, generous, said all the right things. Then I got pregnant, and the mask came off. My jaw clenched, but I didn't interrupt. He isolated me, took my phone, cut me off from friends, even my mother. When I finally tried to leave, he hit me. Her voice didn't break, but her hands trembled. I ran. I hid. I gave birth in a shelter 3 states away. I stepped forward slowly, crouched beside her. You don't owe me this story. She shook her head. I'm not telling you for you. I'm telling it because I'm tired of holding it in. There was a pause. Then she added, he's looking for me. My stomach turned to stone. Leah wasn't just running from poverty. She was running from a predator. I looked at Micah, peacefully asleep, unaware that the world around him had once been chaos. You're safe here, I said quietly. I'll make sure of it. She looked at me, almost daring me to mean it. I've heard that before, she whispered. And I understood. Because when you've been broken by someone who said they loved you, promises sound like traps. But I wasn't going to be another trap. I was going to be the one thing in her life that didn't fall apart. Or die trying. The next morning, I canceled all my meetings. I told my assistant I had a personal emergency, and for once, I didn't care how that sounded. Because for the first time in years, something in my life mattered more than balance sheets and quarterly projections. I made calls. To a private security consultant. to a lawyer I trusted, to a friend who used to work in missing persons. If Marcus was looking for Leah, truly looking, then we needed to be ahead of him. I wasn't going to wait for the devil to knock on the door. Meanwhile, Leah was in the kitchen, awkwardly feeding Micah mashed bananas in one of my whiskey tumblers. She caught me watching her and arched an eyebrow. "What?" she asked. I shrugged. Didn't know my crystal glassware could look that good with bananas in it. She smirked. It was the first real smile I'd seen from her, tired, dry, but genuine. Later that day, I upgraded the security system. Cameras, smart locks, panic buttons. When the technician explained the panic function in the guest room, I noticed Leah was quiet. "Is that really necessary?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "because now you're not alone." She didn't respond. But that night, I passed her room and noticed something. Her shoes weren't by the door. They were inside, by the bed. It sounds small, insignificant, even. But when someone's lived in fear, when every night feels like a maybe-you'll-run situation, they sleep in their shoes. Leah had taken hers off. She was letting herself rest. She was starting to believe she was safe. And that shattered me. Because the world had been so cruel to her that rest was a luxury. That peace had become a fairy tale. But here, in my home, I wanted her to rewrite that story. Micah was already giggling more. He crawled toward the piano and banged on the keys with his little fists. Leah apologized for the noise, but I told her to leave him be. "This house could use a little chaos," I said. She laughed again, less guarded this time. I didn't know what was growing between us. Maybe it wasn't love, not yet. But it was something stronger than curiosity, something warmer than pity. It was care. Real, terrifying, irreversible care. And I was in it. Deep. It happened on a Wednesday. Just an ordinary, gray-skied day. I was home early, something I never used to do before Leah and Micah entered my world. She was humming quietly, folding laundry with that tired grace she carried like second skin. Micah was on the floor, chewing on the edge of a throw pillow like it was the greatest delicacy on earth. And then someone knocked. Not the doorbell. Not a casual knock. A sharp, calculated knock. 3 times. I froze mid-step. Leah dropped the towel she was folding. The blood drained from her face. I stepped forward, hand already in my pocket, where the emergency key fob for the security system rested. The cameras hadn't triggered anything out of the ordinary. No breaches. But whoever it was, they weren't just here for a delivery. "Stay here," I told Leah, quietly but firmly. "Take Micah. Go into the safe room." Her eyes widened. "Ethan." "Now." I opened the front door only halfway, keeping my body between it and the entryway. The man standing there was tall, lean, with slicked back hair and eyes like oiled glass. Smiling, but not with warmth. "Afternoon," he said. "You must be Mr. Duval." I didn't answer. "I'm looking for someone." Woman. Mid-20s. Might be going by the name Leah. Traveling with a child. I didn't blink. "Why are you looking for her?" "She's family," he said smoothly. "We're worried sick." Liar. Everything about him screamed control, not concern. He reached into his jacket. My hand tensed, but he pulled out a photograph. A faded one. Leah, holding Micah in a hospital bed. Her face pale, eyes swollen. The kind of photo you don't take out of love, but out of ownership. "You've got 5 seconds to leave," I said. His smile dropped. "That's a shame. I thought you'd want to help." Then his tone shifted. "You should know, people who get between family business usually regret it." I shut the door in his face and locked every bolt. Leah emerged moments later, cradling Micah like he might vanish. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew. "Marcus," she whispered. I nodded. "He found you." That night, she packed her bag. Said she couldn't put me in danger. Said she'd leave before sunrise. But I wasn't letting her go. Not now. Not like this. "I have resources," I said. "Protection. Legal teams. I'm not just some guy with a nice house." Tears welled in her eyes, the first I'd ever seen from her. "You don't get it," she choked. "Men like Marcus, they don't stop. They don't disappear. They hunt." "I do get it," I said, stepping closer. "And that's why I'm going to make sure you're never hunted again." She didn't say yes. But she didn't walk out the door either. Which, for someone like Leah, was the loudest "I trust you" in the world. I spent the next 48 hours in a war room of my own making. Leah stayed close, but silent. She was watching me with that quiet skepticism she always had, as if waiting for the moment I'd change my mind and decide she wasn't worth the trouble. But I didn't. I couldn't. My legal team built a wall of restraining orders, custody protection, and formal complaints. I filed a civil petition for emergency guardianship under the grounds of immediate threat. I paid extra for speed, knowing that Marcus wouldn't wait. Meanwhile, I hired security to station discreetly around the block. Not visible, but present. Watching. Leah stayed in the house. She didn't ask questions, but I could see her counting exit points, checking on Micah every 20 minutes, flinching when the wind made the windows creak. That kind of fear doesn't leave you overnight. It was around midnight when she finally spoke. He threatened to take Micah once. Said he'd sell him if I didn't behave. I stopped breathing. She was sitting on the floor beside the crib, her hands clenched in her lap. I used to pray he'd just hit me and leave the baby alone. I knelt beside her, not touching, just near. You don't ever have to fear that again. Her voice cracked. You say that like it's easy to believe. I say it because it's true. The next day, Marcus made a mistake. He showed up at my corporate office. He walked in like he owned the place, yelling about kidnapping and stolen women. Security had him removed within minutes, but not before we got it all on camera. That video was gold. We submitted it alongside Leah's testimony and the photographs she'd never wanted to look at again, bruises, threats, medical records. The judge didn't even hesitate. A protective order was granted that same afternoon. Marcus was banned from approaching within 500 feet of Leah or Micah. Any violation meant immediate arrest. We had police assigned to the street, and my lawyers made it very clear the next move would be a criminal case. Leah stood in court like a soldier. She didn't tremble. She didn't break. And when the judge gave her the signed order, she held it like a shield she never thought she'd earn. That night, I found her outside on the balcony, the city lights dancing in her eyes. I'm free, she whispered. I nodded. You are. She turned to me slowly. I don't know how to live free. I smiled. Then we'll figure it out together. And for the first time, she let me hold her. Not just physically, emotionally. She leaned in, not as someone needing rescue, but as someone choosing partnership. And I held her, not as a savior, but as a man finally letting himself feel something real. 3 months later, the nursery was painted in soft shades of morning sky. Not blue, not gray. Just something in between calm, warm, safe. Leah chose the color. Micah had outgrown his crib and was now the proud captain of a toddler bed shaped like a sailboat. He babbled constantly, clapped at cartoons, and called me Da, which Leah insisted was just baby talk for that. But I knew better. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were living. Leah got her first job in years, part-time at a local bookstore that felt like a sanctuary of its own. She'd come home with ink smudges on her hands and eyes lit with purpose. Sometimes, she'd read to Micah in the evenings. Other times, we'd sit in silence on the couch, her legs curled under her, my arm around her shoulder. It wasn't some fairy tale. It was better. It was real. Then, one afternoon, as the sun was painting the floorboards gold, she sat across from me with a strange look in her eyes. I got the paperwork, she said softly. What paperwork? She slid a document toward me, guardianship application. Voluntary. With my name already filled in. I want Micah to have your name, she whispered. I want him to have your protection, your kindness, your world. If you want that too. My throat tightened. I don't just want it, I said. I'd be honored. It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't a ring. But it was a bigger promise than either of those. Weeks later, a judge signed the order. Micah became Micah Duval. And Leah, she became something else too. Not just the woman who once stood in the rain holding a baby and shaking from cold. Not just a survivor. She became my family. People often ask how we met. I usually just smile and say, she showed up at the exact moment I needed saving. And they laugh, thinking I'm joking. But I'm not. Because in all the ways that matter, she didn't need my mansion, my money, or my power. I needed her humanity, her courage, her reminder that even when life breaks us, we can still choose to rebuild. And sometimes, when you open your door to a stranger in the rain, you end up letting in the greatest love you'll ever know.